Have you been having the same argument for years? You find yourself having the same issue over and over again. Sometimes when I work with couples, they tell me that they've been having the same argument for 10 years, for 8 years, for 15 years. Well, it's time to break that cycle. It's time for this argument to end. It's time for us to discover the root of it so that you can be able to be free from it. And I'm in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to do that from a biblical and psychological perspective or point of view. So psychologists describe the cycle of conflict as you get a trigger, then you get a reaction from the trigger, then somebody becomes defensive, or both people become defensive, and then you repeat it. The fight that is happening between you and your spouse over and over again, it's not really, oftentimes, it's not about what's happening in the now, but it is about past and unresolved emotions that have not been dealt with. And it is important that we are self-aware. It is important that we understand what it is that is going on inside of us individually so that we can be able to detect the cycle that has been happening. Most of the time when I work with couples, part of what I do is that I listen to them fight and then I identify the process that they use to fight. And if you pay attention, you will realize that in your fights, in your conflicts with your spouse, that there is a process. Maybe you are a pursuer, which is someone who insists on having the conversation right then and there, and your partner automatically becomes a distancer because they don't want to have the conversation because you both have different ways of processing things. So when things come up, and when somebody comes with something that doesn't please them, something that doesn't make them happy, oftentimes it will trigger or hit something inside of us that is not fully healed. In a relationship, most of the time, both people have things from their family of origin, they have things from the past, they have things from their parents, they have things from childhood that that may still be open wounds that show up in the relationship. So when your spouse says something, it is not hitting the current you that is healed and fully great and okay. It is hitting something inside that maybe somebody else has done. So most of the time during arguments, the things that get triggered are things from the past. And once something inside is triggered, then we automatically get a feeling or a reaction to the statement or to the action of the other person that we are in a relationship with. And once that reaction happens, then we become defensive because we assume that we know what the other person is saying automatically. And once that happens, then we become defensive and then we repeat the whole process over and over again. Oftentimes we will begin to attack back. We will begin to say something to protect ourselves because we don't realize how conflict is actually supposed to happen. Let me pause here and say that conflict in relationships is very helpful, is very useful. And conflict is to be expected. Conflict in a relationship gives you the ability to become more united with your spouse, to do things together that are difficult so that you can grow together as a couple. And when you go through a conflict and you do it and you resolve it successfully, that helps you and allows you to build those muscles with your spouse and makes your marriage or your relationship stronger. James chapter 4, verse 1 says, "What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you?" The second thing that I want to talk about is that most long-term fights aren't about the issue itself. They are about unmet needs, unspoken pain, or deep-seated wounds that are inside of us. Those desires that we have that we're not pretty much communicating about, those things that we have been holding on to, most of the conflict is really about those that we're thinking, oh, how could you say this to me when you haven't done this or when you behaved in this way? So our own desires, our own unmet needs that we haven't communicated in the relationship are what is pretty much popping up during a conflict. And that's why you see oftentimes that couples will begin to bring up things from the past, bring up things that happened during the last argument, during the current argument, because they have not fully let them go. And there is a deep-seated need that is not being met in the relationship. So part of resolving that long-term conflict is allowing yourself to recognize this is not really what this is about. It's not about oranges. It's not about who's dropping off the kids to school. It's not about that. It's about me feeling that I'm not a priority. It's about me feeling that I'm not getting enough help in this relationship. It's about me feeling that my emotions are not validated. Whatever it is for you, recognize what is the deep desire that is inside of you that is not being met by your partner, and communicate that instead. And you will see that it'll be easier to solve those long-term conflicts between the two of you. And I think it's important to discuss how to break the cycle, how to end this long-term conflict. First, we have to identify what the core wound behind the conflict is. What is this fight really about? Is it about control? Is it about feeling unheard? Is it about unmet expectations? Is it about deeper wounds? And we need to be real with ourselves and find the root of things. One thing that I want to make clear as we discuss how to break the cycle is that we have to approach conflict in a way that puts us as part of the same team. Oftentimes, we fight the other person as opposed to fighting, to joining together as a team and fighting the problem, right? Because we think that it's about us individually. We think that it's about what it is that we do. We think that it's about our needs. We think it's about what it is that we need. What is it that we want? When really any conflict that arises in a marriage, in a relationship, is meant to be tackled together. What is this fight really about? Is the question that you really should be asking yourself. Yes, my wife is bringing this up, or my boyfriend is bringing this up, but what is it that they're saying underneath what it is that they're communicating? Are they talking about something that they're missing, something that they would like me to do? And sometimes we don't even understand our feelings enough to be able to properly communicate it to somebody else. But if we fight the right way, we will be able to uncover the underlying things that are hiding underneath the conflict and not pretty much get defensive. So the second thing is to stop fighting to win and start fighting for peace. It's not me versus you. It's not you versus your spouse. It's not about that. It's about both of you coming together and facing the problem. Matthew 5:9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Instead of asking yourself, how do I prove my point? Ask yourself, how can we heal? I want you to pause here, that the right question to ask actually has the word "we" in it. Because conflict is never about what's going to benefit me. If you are in a relationship, you become a team, and therefore you become a we. And once you're able to do that, then you can be able to take the problem out of the person, because your spouse is not a problem. Your partner is not the problem. The problem is the problem. So see the problem as the problem and ask yourself, both of you ask yourself, yes, my spouse is bringing up this issue, but how do we heal together? How do we solve this problem together? The first question was, what is the underlying thing that is being brought up with this discussion, with this argument? And the second question is, how do we heal this together? How do we figure out the solution of it together? The third thing is to change the way that you communicate. And active listening is absolutely important here, because so many times we assume that we know exactly what the other person is thinking, what the other person is desiring, when we miss the point altogether. Sometimes I ask my couples to just practice that in session. Practice it in session. Ask the other person, what is this what you're saying? Active listening is listening to listen, but not listening to respond. listening to understand instead of listening so that you can prove your point or defend yourself. First, if we're able to put ourselves as one team and not two separate people, then we can be able to practice active listening together. Basically, this is how it works. You say, is this what you're saying? Help me understand what you're feeling in this moment. Am I getting it right that this is what you're saying? And the other person can calmly say, yes, this is what I'm saying. This part is not correct. This is not what I'm saying. You're not understanding this piece. Then help me understand it. Break it down for me in a different way so that I can be able to understand it. We should not respond to anything that our spouse brings up towards us until understanding is present. Because you cannot apply wisdom with the knowledge that you have until full understanding is present. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of conversations between couples, because we don't take the time to pretty much understand each other. And if you sense that there is something that is rising up inside of you, that defensiveness that is usually part of conflict is rising up inside of you, just calm your own self down. Allow yourself to take a deep breath. Remind yourself that this is a team effort, that this is a teamwork. This is not your spouse attacking you. This is not your spouse saying that this is something that is all your fault. This is your spouse bringing up a need, bringing up something that's going to benefit the whole relationship. And it is important that in those moments where you feel that you're getting triggered and you want to become defensive, that you are honest with yourself and that you take a moment and take a deep breath. And the spouse also that is bringing up the thing should be using I statements, meaning that you're not pointing the fingers, you're not blaming the other person, you're talking about your own feelings. Every time that you leave your clothes in the middle of the bathroom floor and I have to pick it up, it makes me feel like you don't appreciate all of the things that I do in the house to keep the house safe, to keep the house clean. Every time that you leave the cabinet door open and I walk around in the dark and I hit my foot on it, it makes me feel like you don't value me, that you don't understand that I'm not looking, that you don't understand that this is difficult for me, that this hurts me every single time it happens. What that does is that it helps the other person that's on the receiving end not become defensive where they feel like they have to defend themselves, because you are talking about your own feelings. And you're pretty much saying, when you do this, it makes me feel this way. Instead of saying, you are so inconsiderate. Why would you leave the cabinet door open? You knew I was gonna hit my foot in it. You don't care about me. And all of these things, you're saying it and you're taking accountability for your own feelings and you're communicating that clearly. And that makes it easier for then the other person that's listening to then reflect it back to you and say, are you saying this, this, and this? Yes, this is what I'm saying. Then you can pause. And if there is something that is rising up inside, then you can then address it properly as opposed to giving a reaction. And in one verse that I want you guys to keep in mind is Proverbs 15, verse 1, that says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The way that you respond will impact how the conversation moves forward. And it is important that we understand that a conflict happens with two people. And if it's happening with two people, and if the two people are not on the same side, then the conflict is going to go the wrong direction. It's going to become one of those things, again, that you have to stuff under the rug and just leave it alone until the next time that it comes up in a different form. But if you can provide a gentle answer, if you can provide an empathetic answer, if you can really put yourself in the other person's shoes and fully understand, right now at this moment, this conversation is not about me. It's not about me proving my point. It's about this person saying that I have hurt their feelings in one way or another. If we can then apologize when we need to, if we can then recognize where we've gone wrong, if we can validate the other person's feeling and fully hear them out, it'll be easier for them to be able to hear us in return, forgive us, and then we can move forward with the conversation. And if you have something to bring up afterwards, of course you can do that, but not while the person is bringing up something that is painful and that is hurting them. And so many times we have conflicts where we open 50 boxes at the same time. Oh, you did this. And oh, you remember when you did that? Oh no, you do this all the time. And we're dealing with 50 things at the same time. If you are able to stick with one thing at a time, it will lead to resolution as opposed to a revolving conflict that never ends. The last thing is let go of the need to be right. Part of relationships is sacrifice. You don't need to be right all the time. You need to give understanding. And I think in conflict, we're waiting for the thing that we need to get over and over again. I have to prove my point. I have to do it right. And so many times, because we are not healed individually, it's two 8-year-olds having a discussion. It's two 8-year-olds having an argument. It's a 12 and a 15-year-old having an argument when we are grown adults. We need to grow up and we need to let go of the need to be right and value the other person above yourself. If you can't do that for each other, then you will find resolution for the conflicts that you deal with. Colossians 3:13, bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you have a grievance against the other person. Forgiveness is not weakness, it's actually a strength. Be quick to forgive, because if you forgive, then you won't have 50 things that you have to pop up during one conflict because you have never let go. So here are some action steps for today's video. You have to have an open and calm conversation in the heat of the moment. So take some time and regulate yourself and make sure that you're okay to have the conversation before it begins. Agree on one change that each person can make. So after you discuss it, after you listen to one another, after you seek understanding, agree on one thing that the other person can make. Allow yourself to pray with one another. I find so many times when we are in the midst of conflict, we never think to invite God in the midst of the conflict. Invite God in the midst of it, especially if it feels too overwhelming for you. This is a good place, a good time to tag God in. It is a good place for you to start praying for the other person. Even when your heart feels angry. So many times we act based on feelings. Relationships are not about feelings. Relationships are about what is it that we need to do to honor God in this relationship? What is it that we need to do to lift up the name of God in this relationship? And that involves you being united so that the enemy won't have space and room to pretty much come in between you and your spouse, because you really have to be together. And then the last thing I would say to do as action steps is to set boundaries so that you prevent the cycle from repeating. After you've forgiven each other, decide, how is it when this comes up for you again, this is how you can nudge me. This is how you can remind me so that I know automatically what you're saying and I can pretty much do what it is that I have to do so that you don't have to do this. And do the work. Relationship is work. Do the work so that whatever it is that the other person has been dealing with, they don't have to tell you 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. That the moment that the conversation happens, that you are intentionally making sure that they do not have to bring this up to you again. That the moment they say it and you understand it, you do your part. And you make sure that it doesn't happen again. So if you've been stuck in a conflict, I challenge you to try this. I challenge you to invite God into your conflict. I challenge you to do all of the things that I discussed and follow this pattern. And I guarantee you that you will see resolutions to those long-term conflicts. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like this video if you like it, and subscribe to this channel to get tips how to develop a healthy relationships moving forward. I'll see you in the next video.